Hey guys, and we are back with another review on the final episodes of Invincible Season 3. This whole season has been a writing masterpiece, and my emotions have been all over the place. It has been full of wonderful gems and great moments. I personally like this season a little more than Season 2, but what I will say is both of their finales were 10 out of 10. Season 3 had many concerns, but boy did they step up their game in these last two episodes. So all I can say is thank you to the staff. Beginning with episode 7, it starts off with a flashback to how Levi survived the fight with Mark, and if you don't remember in the last season finale, Mark beat the living shit out of Angstrom to the point where everybody but comic readers believed he was dead. I mean, look at him. There's no way he really should have survived this, looking like Ferrero Rocher chocolate. But with the little bit of life he had, he was able to open a small portal to escape back to his evil lair, and his AI robots were able to fix him up, bringing him back to health. He then devises such a devious plan where he gathers all of the multiverse marks for an all-out war against our main protagonist. What an evil guy. It's crazy that he teamed up with all the evil Marks who did harm to him in every other universe, but wants to focus on a Mark who is the good guy in this universe and destroy his life. It makes no sense, but he found a way to justify his plan. And the Marks get to Earth and start wreaking havoc for no reason. Nothing but absolute violence. It's literally all insanity. And this Mohawk Mark by far is my favorite. He literally did not give two fucks. And let's talk about Rex real quick. His character development throughout the seasons has been absolutely beautiful to watch. I remember the times where people really hated this guy for being so cocky and useless at the same time. But he did some growing as a man, and the fact that he could kill one of the Marks was actually insane. Mans exploded his whole skeleton in order to give the final blow, and boy did I cry. Him and Ray had such great chemistry, but it's sad to see that it ended this way. Also, it was nice seeing Donald get in the field and get active. Look at his AI side doing good for humanity. No lie, our guy Mark was pretty impressive in this episode. The fact that he was winning against a double team has showed his constant progression as a fighter. He's finally starting to get major wins in his fights after 2 seasons of straight L's. However, they were still overwhelming to deal with, and Omnimark snapped Eve's leg in half. Oh my god. When I tell you this was absolutely gruesome. Cecil transports his reanimant to try to help with the 2 Marks while our guy could take her to the GDA's hospital. Shortly after her surgery, we realize that Mark is choosing to stay in the hospital with Eve because he fears that one of his multiverse cells would show up and kill her. Now guys, I understand why this decision would piss a lot of you off. For one, there are millions of people getting killed by the chaos ensued by your duplicates. They are destroying major cities in the world for fun, all because they want to kill you. And 2, your brother is out there fighting, which is an insane feat to ask a child, but because this is an Avenger level threat, every hero is needed. And before y'all tear him up, Mark is still a young dude that is still growing who chose his lover over everything else, because that is what matters to him. I know it's going to sound crazy, but it was really a lose-lose situation. There's about 18 Marks out there, so in the end, he'd probably just end up getting jumped. And if they were to all show up to the hospital, Mark and all the GDA members would become extinct. And by the grace of God, the evil Marks came to the realization that we came to a couple hours ago, which is, why are we doing this to our own guy? This has to be the funniest interaction ever, because their collective IQ has to be at most 50, because this plan made no sense from the beginning. Once they came to the conclusion that their actions were wrong, they then turned on Angstrom, who even predicted that they would eventually do this. Them to the place where Mark and him fought in the finale of season 2. And now the heavily anticipated rematch against Angstrom and Mark is upon us. And it was one for the ages. Mark has figured out a way to avoid his portals with different flying techniques, and those balls were overpowering Mark at first, but he overcame them. Let's get a moment of silence. Alright, carry on. He grabs Angstrom by the neck, and Oliver shows up asking why he's hesitating to kill Angstrom. Mark then becomes indecisive, leaving time for Angstrom to escape back into his evil lair. I never wanted a character to die so bad, but it's okay. His AI robots turned on him after witnessing how dirty he did the multiverse Marks. They're about to have their way with him. But back to Mark, he goes and helps rebuild the inner city along with Oliver and the GDA. And Powerplex apparently killed one of the Marks, which is such an incredible feat. Once he sees Mark, Bro's PTSD is immediately triggered and starts to spaz as him and Oliver put him down. He starts to scream to the civilians that Invincible was responsible for all this chaos, and even though he's wrong, to the average person he's right, because all they saw was Invincible killing and leveling cities. So now Mark has to deal with the negative perception of Invincible. I don't know how many times I felt bad for Mark in this series, but I'm gonna assume that that feeling will never go away because nothing good happens in his life. Now let's get to the finale. This was a very one-sided bloodbath. This felt very similar to when Nolan punked out Mark in season 1. Like, there was a drastic difference in power. This man was literally toying with Mark. Conquest is just different. Conquest had this man Cecil in distress looking for options because he was afraid that his strongest hero was about to die because his intel told him that this new Viltrumite had levels far above Nolan. And yes, Conquest is stronger than Nolan. He is known to be the second strongest Viltrumite, so much so that the other members of the planet won't even speak to him out of straight fear. All the budget must have went into this episode because this fight looked straight out of a movie. With just one punch, this dude was shattering buildings. The scene where Mark begged for him to stop is all you need to know about this fight. Had bro begging for mercy, and let me remind you, this is a much stronger version of Mark that faced Omni-Man in season 1. Also, what he did to Oliver is unforgivable. Just one slap had this boy coughing up half his liver and losing half his teeth. All little bro wanted to do was help his big bro and ended up on a stretcher. The most disrespectful part of this fight was when Conquest grabbed Mark by the neck and dragged him through half the city while simultaneously using his chrome dome to kill civilians in the city. When I tell you the amount of blood we saw in this episode was absolutely disturbing. This was honestly so disrespectful and sad. Eve arises from her coma and heads straight to the battlefield to give Conquest a nice 1v1. She was able to make the air molecules dense, so it would make it harder for Conquest to evade her hits and restrict his movement. But in the end, he overcame her and ripped her liver right out of her. Very gruesome activity. This scene of Mark having what he thought were his last words with Eve was so sad. This episode brought me to the tears so many times. Mark then promises that Conquest won't make it to see tomorrow, and this dude just laughs in his face. Mark makes one last attempt to hurt Conquest, biting his shoulder because damn near every other bone in his body was broken. Eve then comes back to life due to her innate ability that comes out when she faces a near-death experience. This blast that she let off was enough to burn the skin right off of Conquest and weaken him enough for Mark to give him the final blows. When I tell you Mark gave everything into killing him, he headbutted him to death. And we now for sure knows that he definitely has CTE because that is insane behavior. The shots of Mark's despair makes you feel everything. This was truly a masterpiece. In the end, Eve's special ability allows her to repair herself completely, and yet once again the heroes finally make it out, but barely, by the nails of their toes. And lastly, when Mark wakes up from his 3-day coma, his first question is where's Conquest's body, and this speaks to the level of distrust that he has for Cecil. Cecil then takes him to his lair and has Conquest's body in a bag, and Mark tells him to burn it. But of course, we later learn that Cecil kept his head in a fishbowl located in a fortress underground. Just when Cecil was getting into our good graces, he finds a way to become the most hated character in the series, and that's saying something. I see that Mark needs to choke him out for good next time.